Afternoon. Welcome to the UN Correspondents Association. I'm Pamela Falk, and we have a very interesting program today. 50 years ago, as we all know, President Kennedy was assassinated, and it changed the course of American politics. In many ways, it changed the course of many issues in world politics. We all knew where we were, most of us, at the time, and very few things have lived on with the legacy of President Kennedy as much as his work and, of course, conspiracy theories about his assassination. So I am very pleased to have with us one of our own, UNCA correspondent, Stefano Vaccara. And I want to tell you a little bit about him because, first and foremost, he is an UNCA correspondent, but he is also Sicilian.
That explains
Thought that would He is the founder and editor and chief of La Voce of New York, an Italian online newspaper. He's also the UN correspondent for Radio Radicale. For 18 years, he was the executive editor and columnist for the Italian language daily America Oggi. His articles, interviews, and opinions have been published in major newspapers and magazines for the past 20 years. He has taught since 1997 at the City University of New York Lehman College, and that courses include the Mafia, demystifying the social and political phenomena, and media and democracy. Stefano is the author of the book that you see here, and he will tell you about it, called Carlos Marcello, the man behind the Kennedy assassination, or JFK assassination. He holds something that most of us don't know, very low-key about this. He holds a master's degree in international relations from Boston University, and I won't even try to pronounce it. Matteo maybe can do it. The laurea di dottore? Di dottore?
Laurea di dottore is like a dottore.
Laurea di dottore.
It's a laurea. Is the same equivalent of degree, master
Yes.
in master.
From a university in Italy. We are looking forward to your presentation and asking many questions about the Kennedy assassination. Please join me in thanking you. Welcome, Stefano.
Thank you, Pamela. I just want to say that the university, my alma mater, for me is important. I say it's the University of Siena in Italy, where I study history, and that's why this book is a book of history. Before even I started, I want to give to my colleague Harold, because he read the book. Happened that he wanted to read the book right away. Then he interviewed me. I think he got it. He got the main points. I want him to give a word on what he thinks about it, because he will give me also a chance to tell you also why I wrote this book. And then very quickly we will go right away to questions, because this is why I'm here, to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Thank you, Pam, for organizing this. This is, I think, important book to be presented. Congratulations in front of all our colleagues. Let me tell you why I am congratulating you on this, because this is really a reference book that someone who is investigating or who would like to write on the assassination of President Kennedy should read it. At the same time, you can take it with you. I can just tell you or recommend it. If you are going to Caribbean or somewhere else and you go for vacation, you will enjoy like reading some of Mario Puzo's best plot novel, although it's not novel, it's a documentary book. So I really enjoyed. You made me, so far as a reader, you made me proud of myself how many details and facts I did know actually about it. And all of us probably would know, since this is, as Pam said, a very important issue, not only in the American, but it involves history. We can only imagine what would happen if President Kennedy was not assassinated that November 22nd in Dallas in 1963. And you are asking that question on the right face and the chapters in the book. We can only imagine, and what would have happened if that all the ingredients, historical ingredients, didn't were not put as they are in history, as they happened. What is important for Stefano's book, I would say, is beside that you are discovering something that is outside of the box thinking. And I saw something in American television recently, as one journalist was saying, 90% of the American people do believe that it was plot behind the Kennedy's assassination, President John Kennedy assassination. Only 10% of mainstream media and the politicians believe that was put in the official version. So this is finger in the eye of the official, rather this one, because I read the book that Stefano gave me that was printed before.
Before was printed.
And this is the finger in that official version of the book, of the history actually. Just few days ago I also saw at the public, it was not actually public television, but it was of the American channels, TV channels, very good made by, I would say, Hollywood production and very good casting. It was Bill O'Reilly official version of the history of that. And what they actually wanted us in that kind of history, and I must excuse myself, I'm only a student of the history, I'm not an expert on the issue, etc. But what they wanted with that kind of official version of the history of the assassination of President Kennedy is for us as readers, as the history lovers or so, to believe in that official version, which is that one lunatic named Lee Harvey Oswald was all alpha and omega, as we say in Europe, behind the plot and behind the realization of this association. Not only that offends your intelligence, reader's intelligence, but it's somehow impossible. Beside knowing the ideological odds of the Lee Harvey Oswald toward Kennedy, but also knowing that he was at that time not, I would say, formed personality. He renounced his American citizenship back in Moscow, then he came back to America, etc. But what we were never told in that way, like we were told now, and like it was written in Stefano's book, is the connections that Lee Harvey Oswald really did have with the Mafia in New Orleans, because he's originally from the New Orleans, where the boss, Marcello, was actually in charge. He's Sicilian. He was actually already in the war with Kennedys. And let's not forget that the younger brother of the President Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, was the most powerful attorney general ever when President Kennedy came in office, and he waged his own war against Mafia and against Carlo Marcello. Am I pronouncing him?
Carlos Marcello.
Marcello.
His real name was Calogero Minacori.
Yeah, Carlos Marcello, and he waged his war against him. Robert Kennedy wrote a book named Enemy Within. And beside all these stereotypes, not only stereotypes, but the information that the main enemy of America at that time, as it was seen, was the communists, was the SSSR, was the USSR. Actually, Robert Kennedy not only hinted, but has written that Mafia was one of the enemies, main enemies within. Then, when Kennedy came to office, John Kennedy, and his brother became the Attorney General, they managed to expel, to deport somehow Carlos Marcello to Guatemala in the middle of the Americas. But he managed to come back. I'm not going to translate, to talk about the book and everything, but he managed to come back and to say, talking to his subordinates and to his Mafia people, I'm going to take Pueblo, how do you say it? The piece of,
Yes.
how do you pronounce that?
The stone.
The stone from my shoes.
Yeah,
It's getting rid of President Kennedy, is going to be, for me, like getting rid of this small stone from my shoes. So actually, he started to plan, and what is interesting in this book, and Stefano is talking and writing about this, is how Carlos Marcello became a mafia boss, and how he managed to put in place all that network that was able to engage that kind of lunatic and that kind of odd personality, I would say, like Harvey Oswald was, and to put him. And they had, in Mafia, they had you explain that they had the explanation for that kind of personality who is at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and could be used.
I would say the right place at the
but actually it's...
Yeah, the patsy.
The patsy. They have men, usually who is at the wrong place, or as Stefano says, at the right place. They can use it and accuse it for the murder or for the crime that actually was committed by somebody else.
Yeah.
So to stop here, and to give floor to Stefano. Actually, this is a good book. I highly recommend it, and there are many reasons for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my friend, that took the time to read the book. I want to first, before I say something and leave the floor to questions, I want to thank this organization, my colleague Pamela Falk, that of CBS is running in a wonderful way, and I think I thank all my colleagues that are here today, because I think this is the right place to present this book. It's going to be presented in other places, at NYU and another part of the country, but I believe that this is the important presentation, because this marks not only the 5th anniversary of President Kennedy assassination. President Kennedy came here. In his 3 years as a president, he came here twice. He didn't deliver the speech every year. He came the first just when he became president, but then he came back. And in September 1963, a few months before he died, he delivered a speech in this building. And if you take the time, if you read the speech, you can see how, what if? You can really say this word. This phrase, what if President Kennedy didn't die in Dallas on November 22nd? Because in that speech at the United Nations, the famous speech that everybody quote, somebody say that maybe because his life was the American University speech. But I believe that also the United Nations, at the General Assembly speech in 1963, he showed the world that he wanted to change the world, the way the world was going. I believe after the Cuban Missiles crisis, President Kennedy was a different, non-president, he was a different man, a different human being, a person that understood what was at risk, and he was trying to find a solution. And I believe, I'm not an expert, I want to say right away, I'm not an expert on the Kennedys, I'm an expert on, I feel myself I'd be an expert on the Mafia. But I care about international relations, and I believe that President Kennedy believed on the United Nations. You know, with the American administration and President, we have moments where I believe that the last months of President Kennedy's life, he believed in this institution. And he showed in his speech. And if you go and read that speech, you will find him talking about issues that are talked today. Environmental, for example, issue. He was talking about environment. And so he was not talking only about disarmament, but even issues that they are talked 30, 40 years after his death. With this parenthesis, now I'm going to talk about, very briefly, I'm going to say this, it's not a complicated story. Actually, for me, the reason why I did this book is because I live in this country. My family, I created a family in this country, I have 2 kids. I'm an American citizen, not only Italian. And for me, was very important. I couldn't understand why such a simple story in the sense it was not difficult to find out who killed our president in 1963, why it didn't happen. Why after 50 years, actually, we are still here debating who killed President Kennedy. For me, not only because, well, probably because I'm Sicilian, I have to say. Probably because I teach a course on the Mafia. As soon as you look at the homicide and look at you see the way Kennedy died, you recognize that this was a Mafia hit. Careful. When I'm talking about Mafia, I'm not talking about gangsters, mobsters, John Gotti, Al Capone. We're not talking about this kind of Mafia. That's not Mafia for me. The Mafia is what Carlos Marcello, alias his real name was Calogero Minacori. What really Mafia is, the Mafia is not against the establishment. The Mafia is not against politics, against who is in power. The Mafia, you are in presence of Mafia only when there is a relationship with power. If not, you have to find another name. So, for me, the reason why a real Mafia, like it was the New Orleans Mafia of Carlos Marcello, for somebody that doesn't know, the Mafia started in this country, appeared the first time in this country in New Orleans, not in New York or Chicago, those other places that everybody remembers, but it's actually New Orleans.
And that's what you describe very well in this book.
Yes, it is very important because the Mafia in New Orleans stayed, like it always kept its original mark, if you want, its original way to be, connected with politics and with power. Instead, in New York, in Chicago, in Buffalo, in Philadelphia, whatever you want, it's been always, there were moments if you want, but the most of the time, I believe, it was still dangerous, but not as dangerous as was Marcello's Mafia. The Mafia act and kill and can kill any target, even at the level of a president, when he's sure of being unpunished, when he knows they will not have to pay a price. I write in my book on the beginning right away that for a major assassination, usually an investigator needs 3 ingredients if you want, right? That is, you need a motive, you need the means, and you need the opportunity. So an investigator who goes to a murder scene will look for it. For a Mafia hit at that level is not enough. You need 2 more. Number 4, blackmailing. Means that the Mafia will act only if it can blackmail the power that will have to bring justice to this homicide. So, or in this case, any potential avengers, in this case, the state, the government, the Mafia has to be in a position that can blackmail them, so they will not act. And the number 5, without this number 5, the Mafia will not act. The target has to be isolated. The target, the establishment so-called, it doesn't like the presence anymore. Careful. What you've been thinking so far, when you think that Oswald didn't act alone, and right away you start to think to a big conspiracy, you, like let's say an Oliver Stone movie that brings the story in New Orleans without including Carlos Marcello, I think is crazy. You think right away to a big, means that whoever did it is also responsible for the cover-up and so on. It's not the case. In this story, in my book, I don't think that who did the cover-up killed the president. Who did the cover-up had to do the cover-up, because not doing the cover-up will have been worse than finding the truth. That's why after, I think after 50 years, this should be, clear. I mean, it's not, I'm sorry for my colleagues around, I saw good work out there, the CNN and other channels do great documentaries, but I think they were just going again through the step of what's called the Warren Commission, giving a lot of space on the thesis without, for example, taking in consideration that my thesis, what you have in this book, is not like Stefano Vaccara, oh, like, what a brave guy, all by himself find out that the Mafia killed Carlos Marcello. It's not me. This was said officially by the Congress of the United States, the Commission. Took 3 years, a lot of $1 million spent. And in 1979, Congress, it was this high committee on assassination to find out who killed the president. Congress, in documents, there's several thousand of pages, but you can read it online. Congress thinks that this man, Carlos Marcello, is responsible. Doesn't have the proof. They can't say we can't prove it in court. But we think that he is the major suspect in killing, and now I tell you why he killed the president. He killed the president to stop the brother, Robert Kennedy. In this picture that you have, the encounter, the fatal encounter, if you want, for the Kennedys, happened in 1959 when both the brothers were part of a commission, anti-Racket commission. They were trying to investigate in Congress. They were trying to investigate the relationship between the Mafia and trade unions. Robert Kennedy, while John Kennedy was already a senator, Robert Kennedy was a counsel of the committee, and he was actually responsible for the investigation, to do the calls, to make the people come in front of the committee. And he did the call to have Carlos Marcello in front of the committee, and he did it because already Carlos Marcello had been called by the Kefauver Commission 8 years before, the first commission for Congress. And Robert Kennedy understood that who he had in front, he was the most, I would say, powerful Mafia boss that this country had. Unfortunately, I would say you always heard names like Giancana, Trafficante, of course, very, very powerful people in the crime scene. But I believe that Carlos Marcello, for his connection, the real Mafia, the real connection he had with power, governors, congressmen, mayors, the way he was always able to isolate himself. And also, I have to say, today, I don't know how many of you before came here or before received the invitation to come here knew his name. And instead, if somebody had told you, I don't know, John Gotti or Al Capone, of course, everybody knows the name. But Carlos Marcello is responsible for the homicide of the last century. Nobody knows it. I want to leave to the floor. I just want to tell you this. In this book, you will not find all the little details about who shot whom. And I'm sorry, Harold, you did everything right. Only one thing that I think I want to make sure that there is not. I believe that Oswald was involved. What I mean is to say that...
But not alone.
Exactly. And not even. I mean, it could be in my book, you have important that you have Carlos Marcello all the time in any scenario. You can have Oswald shooting with other people. You can have Oswald shooting alone. You can have Marcello be helped by the anti-Castrists. You can have Marcello helped by the drug dealers from Marseille. You can have any solution. Doesn't prevent Carlos Marcello being behind the assassination that he also actually confessed then in prison to an FBI informant. But what is very important here is that in any scenario you have, when you have this man that is connected with Oswald, I don't remember if you said, but Oswald, yes, was from New Orleans, was born in New Orleans, but he was raised, he didn't have a father, but he was raised by his uncle, that's Marais, that was Carlos Marcello Bucchi.
You have that in chapter 19.
Yes, good.